All right, everyone. We're going to let everyone get in and get settled. But thank you for joining us. We're excited to have you. So come on in. Welcome to this town hall. We're excited to have you here. And we're really set up for an amazing conversation, really on innovative solutions in this crazy period of time that we're at. My name is Jeremy Goldberg. For those that don't know me, may not recognize me. I am the president and quarterback at LeagueApps. I am a huge fan of the world of adult sports segment. I have many trophies and broken fingers to show for it, but also appreciate how challenging a time this is for you right now, in particular. Often the adult segment is left behind in a lot of the conversations, whether that's in permits or government or whatnot. And it is so critical as we think about where we're at, how we rebuild community, how we bring people together, how people kind of get through the kind of mental health and the physical health implications of all the things we're contending with. So thank you for your leadership and all that you've done. I just want to set the table a little bit today, and then really turn it over to a great panel discussion. And what I want to start with is helping to recognize that now is a time for innovation, right? I've shared a number before with the broader LeagueApps and NextUp community, which is that when you look back at any period of massive economic disruption, which this clearly is, in addition to being a pandemic, about 9% of organizations figure out how to get through a time like this and thrive, right? When you look a few years out, they figure out how to thrive. Some organizations don't make it. A lot of organizations end up middling along, but 9% figure out how to go through that, right? And that's often because they harness innovation. There's an NYU professor and an innovation expert by the name of Scott Galloway. I think really highly recommend his podcast. And he actually quoted Lenin, and this is what he quoted when he quoted Vladimir Lenin. Nothing may happen for decades, and then a decade can happen in a week, which is certainly how COVID has felt, right? Nothing may happen for decades, and then a decade can happen in a week. And we've been going through this constant innovation. But the reality of the world we're living in, even pre-COVID, was that the pace of innovation was accelerating, right? The way we think about technology and how that could impact the way we market our organization, how we build community, right? How we deliver the kind of experience that we want to deliver, how we innovate in the kind of programs that we're offering, right? This is a time for innovation, and that is more clear than ever before. So what organizations embrace that and figure that out and are stronger for it when you emerge through these periods of disruption? The second thing is this is a time for community, right? This is very true at a time when our country feels so divided. And the first thing I'll say is that you all and what you are doing in each of your local communities is so critical. It is so needed as you bring people together, right? As you create a space through sport that where people can get to know each other that's very different than the other people they might deal with. And that's also why I want to recognize the SSIA and why we're so kind of honored to be part of this kind of event series with them. And we've always enjoyed our collaboration with them, because more than ever before, we appreciate the value of community. We appreciate the value of having a network, a professional network for people who are dedicating their livelihoods and their efforts to doing this and to getting better. It's also why at LeagueApps we've invested in that community too. And the last thing is this is a time for leadership, right? On the eve of another presidential debate and a presidential election and congressional elections and lots of conversations about leaders. Regardless of where you span on the political spectrum, what's very clear is we need more leaders in our society. We need people who step up that make it different. And you all are certainly community leaders, and there's such a critical role that you all play in the times that we have. So whether it's an event series like this or other things that we're doing at LeagueApps, we're really focused on how do we help you become better leaders, how we help you innovate, and ultimately we give you the community that you need. So we're going to announce something later today, but we're going to open it up to you all first. So keep this off of social media for now. But we're announcing something called NextUp University, which is basically an evolution of our ongoing platforms that's really focused on investing in the local community youth sports leaders around the country, and allows them to get the kind of professional development, the education, the network they need to continue to thrive and succeed. So this event will be between December 2nd and 4th. It's free, right? And it's all aimed at professional development and investing in you. You'll have an opportunity to be a part of tracks that include leadership and culture, that include marketing and brand, that includes new revenue generation, and that also includes the ability to think about virtual training and innovation. And each of those tracks, you're going to hear lectures, short form lectures from some of the most incredible experts in the entire world, and the opportunity to kind of discuss that with other people that are peers of yours. You'll have the opportunity to go through workshops and learn those hard skills, and then ultimately go through a case study or application of those workshops where you'll learn together as a group. All this will be part of a really super interactive platform. There'll be also one-off workshops on diversity, equity, and inclusion, on sponsorship and revenue generation for nonprofits, and also on harnessing data and some incredible keynote speakers that will really inspire from the best entrepreneurs and activists and sports executives and athletes to help kind of frame the conversation. So that's December 2nd and 4th. It is free because we want to make this an investment in you. And one thing I'll say is not only do we want you to be part of it, but if you have staff that work for you, part-time or full-time, we want you to encourage and give you the opportunity to help develop them as well, because we know how hard they're working and how much you're counting on them too. So look out for that. We're going to post that link in the chat tool. Feel free to sign up and let them know. Space will be limited, so don't wait. And then last but not least, when I talk about leadership and innovation, I'm very excited to bring into this virtual stage Nate Baldwin. So if Nate can come on in. So hopefully Nate doesn't need much of an introduction to many of you, but I will still give him an introduction. And Nate is one of the newer members of the LeagueApps team, but certainly not new to LeagueApps community. We actually know Nate way back when he was the founder and lead organizer of the Western Alternative Sports Association, WASA, back in Denver, which today actually still continues to provide adult social sports leagues and events, corporate events, charitable initiatives, and things like that. And when he was there, it grew to one of the largest independent sports providers in Colorado. I think they nearly had about 10,000 people in their programs. And connected to LeagueApps, he was very much one of our first pilot programs, pilot customers ever. So we've stayed in close touch with Nate over the years. He later went to the Appleton Parks and Recreation Department, where he led youth sports programming, helped grow participation there from 75% up over 75%. And he was recognized within the industry, also by the Aspen Institute, for the kind of innovation he led. And if you can lead innovation inside of a park and rec department, you definitely know how to innovate. You definitely know how to drive change. And he came on board LeagueApps July 2020 this summer to really help us lead our adult recreation efforts and the way that we're working with sport-based youth nonprofits as a customer success manager. So he is an expert in this sector. I am not. He is an expert in innovation. I also try to be. And so I'm excited to pass the baton to Nate, who will help kind of lead the conversation. And I just thank you all for all that you're doing and excited to support you. Hopefully I'll see you at the NextUp University event and also next week's event where we'll continue the conversation. So Nate, show's yours.
Well, I'm humbled by the kind words, Jeremy. Thank you. And I'm excited to be on board at LeagueApps and excited for this conversation too. I think this is going to be, we had our pre-call yesterday with our guests, and I think the comment I made to them was that, I'm feeling excited and inspired by the ideas and the innovation going on in this segment. And I'm not even a programmer in this segment anymore. So if I was that excited by the conversation, I'm really excited for you all to hear this as well. So just a couple of thoughts, and then we'll dig right into this. But the challenges, this has been really well documented. The challenges of programming in a pandemic have been unprecedented. We've heard lots about that, and we're all intimately aware of it. But I think, when times of adversity like this come along, we look for the silver linings. And I think a silver lining with this experience, if there is one, has been that it's really given us as an industry segment to reassess our why. Why exactly do we do what we do? And I think if you really dig into that question, for most of us who have been in the adult recreation space, we got into this work because we believe deeply in the power of sport to bring people together in our communities. And it's really that simple. What I know, even just in my few months at LeagueApps, I know that we align very closely with that purpose as well. So for those of you who are already with us, that's a very tight alignment and purpose, which I'm very excited about. But the pandemic has dramatically shaken up how we do that. Physically bringing people together with appropriate precautions has been immensely challenging. But it's also forced us to realize that in an odd way, the sports we offer, the programs we offer, were just the excuse by which we came together. It simply provided the reason and the opportunity to gather and have fun and leave everyday life behind, even if that's just for an hour or two. And there's many people out there right now that are desperately missing that sense of connection. So that kind of leads into the foundation of this 2-week series that we're in here. There's really 2 layers to it that we're excited to dive into over the course of these next 2 weeks. And one is, how can organizations pivot right now? How can we leverage our talents? How can we leverage our reach as organizations to continue to provide meaningful opportunities to come together when space is limited, when anxieties are high, and all of those things are impacting our normal? We're excited to dive into that in depth with the guests today and provide some very actionable takeaways for you all. But 2, what does this mean for us long term? How can we begin thinking strategically, better define the value that we're bringing to the people in our communities, and how can we be innovative in how we serve that need. So I think we all have to realize that this need isn't going away. This need for community is not going away. I think we all know that after many months of pandemic life, but I would also challenge us to think about how intense that need for community is going to become over the coming months. It's only going to increase. And so that's kind of the longer range, big picture topic that we're going to dive into next week, same time, same place. So I hope you'll make plans to join us for that. I've taken up enough oxygen. I want to make sure that we give our guests plenty of time to share their expertise. That's what you're all here for. Just a couple of quick housekeeping items. Use the chat function in Zoom here to share any questions you might have. We're going to do our very best to leave about 10 minutes at the end of this to answer your specific questions. So please use that chat at the bottom to ask any questions you might have along the way, and we will make sure we save some time for that. You're also going to see a couple of Zoom questions, a couple of quick polls for you to chime in on and give us some perspective about what your life is like in your part of the country. The first one we're going to ask is this. It's, what does your winter programming look like? Does it look normal? Is it some sort of modified version, or are you on hold? So you see that question pop up here. Feel free to answer that, and that's going to kind of lead the first part of our conversation. There's going to be another question later. If I totally forget to prompt it, just keep an eye on your screen and you'll be asked that question. I will do my best to try to prompt the question though. Okay, so some quick bios. I want to bring my guests in. First, I want to introduce Krissy Greenleaf. She's the executive director of the Social Sports Industry Association. This is a trade organization that serves owners and operators of sport and social clubs across the US and Canada. She had previously owned and operated Kaboom Sports and Social Club, while also being a member of SSIA and serving on its executive committee. So Krissy sold her club in 2016 and then joined the SSIA team as their associate director and was promoted to executive director in 2018. So Krissy is a graduate of University of Florida with a bachelor's in advertising and a minor in business. Her previous work experience includes teaching, media buying and planning, account management in industries including healthcare, education, retail, banking, food service, and government. She enjoys riding horses, traveling, spending time with her family and friends. So thanks, Krissy, for joining us. Appreciate it. Next up, I'll introduce Brian Irving. Brian is the VP of Operations for Chicago Sport and Social Club. He's also the president of SSIA. In terms of Chicago Sport and Social Clubs, he handles all things operationally related. Chicago Sport and Social has been around almost 25 years. They're an adult social sports organization that caters to adults 21 and older, running adult sports for over 100,000 participants annually in Chicago in all sports, from basketball, volleyball, soccer, ping pong, bowling, etc. In his role for Social Sports Industry Association, he represents almost 60 clubs in the US and Canada, as we briefly mentioned a minute ago, and they represent over 2.2 million participants participating annually in adult social sports. So thanks, Brian, for joining us. And last but certainly not least, Justin Jacobs, who is with us from Come Play Detroit. He is the owner and founder. He founded Come Play Detroit in February of 2010, and they are the largest provider of intramural sports leagues for adults in Metro and downtown Detroit. The managing entity overseeing all aspects of the Belle Isle Athletic Complex, a 50-acre facility that includes 9 tennis courts, 4 baseball and softball fields, 6 racquetball and handball courts, 2 full basketball courts, and a soccer field. So one thing I never got into is facility management, so you're doing God's work there. So thank you, Justin, for joining us. Appreciate it. Okay, so intros out of the way, let's get into the meat and potatoes here. So just to kind of set the stage for this conversation, I guess, Krissy, I'll kind of lob this to you first. So you've been involved with the adult social sports community for over a decade now. You've probably seen it go through some ups and downs over that time, but nothing like pandemic life. So can you just kind of summarize what has the impact been on the adult rec community? I know SSIA has done some research on this. And as a follow-up question to that, what do you think makes the impact on the adult sports segment unique from other segments?
Sure. Well, the association did an industry impact survey. We did one at the start of the pandemic, and then we did a follow-up at the end of August, beginning of September. And so I'll just give you guys a couple of just, numbers here. 85% of clubs are actually back to operating some form of leagues. However, 76% have lost between 55 to 99% of their revenue when they compare that to last year's numbers. So even though people are back to playing some form of leagues, the money still isn't there for many different reasons, whether it's loss of facilities or people just not wanting to play because they're concerned about the pandemic still. When it comes to employment, 67% have decreased their full-time staff, and part-time employment is down 74% within the industry. One other area that I wanted to mention was just that we did ask about burn rates for different organizations. This was an area that was a little bit more optimistic. 43% had said that they could continue, staying in business for another 6 to 12 months. So that was good to see. 23% said they had 3 to 6 months, and then 26% had 12 months or more left before funds ran out. And I'm sorry, what was your follow-up question? I apologize.
Follow-up question was, what do you think makes the impact on adult sports unique from compared to, like, let's say, the youth sports segment?
Sure. So I think something that's unique to us is that no matter who you are, if you're trying to put on some kind of sport league, you are competing for space. But I do think that adults usually kind of come in last place. If we're operating private businesses, sometimes we have a harder time getting space from Parks and Recs departments, or competing with their own leagues that they're putting on. When it comes to youth sports, we're also usually kind of on the bottom of the barrel if it's between us and a youth sport organizer.
Just from a bit of an outside perspective, it's interesting how, the physical, social, emotional benefits of participation are focused on very heavily when we're talking about things in a youth sports setting. But I think that those benefits are no different for adults. And it's interesting how, to your point, we tend to kind of minimize that in the way in which space is prioritized and the way in which programming is prioritized. I remember this even from my days in this industry, that it's difficult to position those programs and demand the same legitimacy sometimes. And I think that's probably a challenge all of us share in this industry, is getting the right prioritization. So Brian, anything to add from your point of view on either one of those questions? Just any other points you want to make about the impact on the adult rec community and perhaps what makes this segment unique?
Yeah, Krissy hit a lot of it on the head there, but certainly, we're an important fabric of every community that's often not considered that way. We bring so much community and fun, enjoyment, and kind of money to a lot of different segments of business. So the pandemic's hit us especially hard in a lot of different avenues. We're one of the first to close, because we're, about community and about size and interacting in close proximity, and one of the last to reopen. And in some markets that we serve, some have not even opened yet, or some opened and have had to shut back down because of a spike in case. So it is a challenge, like Krissy said, in a lot of instances of competing for space and competing from kind of differentiating ourselves as business people that really contribute and are not just the beer drinker league that's out there playing kickball on a given Saturday. We're a tried and true business that is a small business that cares and contributes to our community and does everything we can to kind of bring people together. We don't have a tangible good that we sell for the most part. What we give is an experience, and when you can't get people together, it makes it really hard to deliver that. So, we've been able to come back in Chicago and play a lot of our leagues, but in terms of trying to find events to happen, we pride ourselves on running a lot of large scale events, and that is kind of off the table or on hold for now, and trying to find other avenues to do that and try to deliver for sponsors. And a lot of us kind of rely on that sponsorship dollar to kind of succeed as a business. The business of running leagues as kind of an independent business is anybody who's tried to organize their friends for a football league, there's a lot more work that goes on into doing the job, and not a lot of financial gain for what you're doing. So it's all about the passion and getting people together. And so that's been the hardest thing. But as we continue to talk today, there's some other things that people have been doing, and we feel good about coming back stronger. And so we appreciate you taking the time to put this on with us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think those are great thoughts. And I think, as you're talking, I think any of us who have worked in the space can instantly relate to some of those credibility challenges that you talked about. And we know what that feels like, especially having those conversations with park districts or places that we're dependent on for space. So I think we can all intensely relate to that. Just looking at the past few months, I guess I'll toss this over to Justin. Looking at the past few months and how you've dealt with the challenges to this point, what have you been able to do to get back on the field over the last few months, particularly for summer and fall? And expanding on that, what were your keys to success in doing so? When we talked briefly yesterday, you kind of talked about the importance of filling in some of the gaps. You talked specifically about sponsorships. So can you just kind of expand on a couple of those thoughts and lines of thinking and just share like how you've navigated these last few months?
Sure. It had to be definitely creative in the way we've been approaching things, and keeping in mind that the safety of our participants needs to be at the very top of our mind. So first thing we did was get creative with providing alternative programs that weren't in person. So we started doing virtual events, anything from trivia, cooking classes, wine tasting. That was really big for us in the March through June time. And then, as you mentioned earlier, as someone who manages a facility, it really actually made it easier for me to be able to have a place to go as our hub for our leagues, because a lot of the cities where they're slow or just decide not to reopen their facilities, even the outdoor places for programming. So we really packed in Belle Isle with a lot of our leagues down there. We had to step back from indoor programming in the wintertime, so we haven't run basketball. We're just preparing to run our first masked basketball league, because we feel that's the only way we can do it in a safe way. It's very important, though, that we're providing value to our sponsors, because as much as we can engage our participants with any real significant drop in participation, it really hurts the bottom line. So we got to make sure our sponsors feel they're still receiving value. So since there aren't opportunities for large scale events, we're really the only opportunity for sponsors to come out and connect with people directly. So we've been able to have booths on site, be able to promote our sponsors, having them have the opportunity to engage with the participants. And we've actually seen that because there's no other major events, sponsors are seeking us out for still finding ways to connect. So that's been a very big positive for us. Looking going forward, we're thinking about how we can still make people feel comfortable. So we're providing a lot of PPE actually. So we have masks and hand sanitizer at all of our programs that we want people to. We're going to try and go above and beyond. Whenever there's, we've had 3 people contact us in regards to having COVID contact or testing positive. So how we handled that was really important to set the tone for how it would be handled going forward. So with weekly programming, if someone tests positive or someone has connected to someone, we provide that team a week off. That gives a 14-day window between games. So just really being creative in all these different aspects. But clearly there's a demand. People want to still feel connected, whether it's in person or virtually. And we are doing everything we can, including polling the community and asking them, what would you like to see? What would you feel comfortable being a part of? Because from the beginning, this has always been, we're a service provider. We're not telling people what to do. We're doing what they want, and we're trying to do our best to do it in a safe way.
Is there a particular new idea or concept that you've engaged over the past couple of months that you would hold up as a really good example of a success story?
Well, our virtual programming has been huge for us, really, because not only does it allow us to still allow people to feel connected, but it's allowed us to expand our market. not only are we doing this in Detroit now, we're getting contacted by companies across the country asking for us to provide, whether it's wine tastings, trivia, and we've become kind of a middleman for others who are in this space who are trying to have access to people but don't know how to get the word out. So we have a virtual programming package that we offer that has wine tasting, cooking classes, escape rooms, trivia, Family Feud. I know Brian's been doing bingo with Chicago, and just trying to have something for everyone. And obviously our cost for all that is minimal. So there's a lot more profit opportunities, and there's something for everyone. So we were doing trivia for free a couple days a week, getting hundreds of people to play. And then that started. We got more aggressive in our outreach to companies to let them know about these opportunities to keep their workforces feeling connected, because everyone's working from home. There's new hires like yourself who've never even worked in your office space yet necessarily, or with your coworkers. I don't know if you've had a chance to meet everyone directly. So we're able to provide that now, and this will be an avenue we'll be able to grow long term, because there'll always be a need for workforce engagement and people who want to feel connected and don't necessarily want to play kickball, and for people of all ages, right? So it's expanding our network.
I mean, these are the kind of thoughts I was getting excited about yesterday, listening to you guys talk. It's that you can take this time and you can spend it lamenting about the state of affairs and, when are we, worrying about when we're going to come out of it, or you can use this time to pivot, adjust, continue to serve the need, and throw some things at the wall and see what sticks. I mean, this is a great time to experiment. And I love how you're taking all those opportunities and you're engaging your community in that process too. So, Brian, I want to toss this over to you too, because I know you're doing some things that are similar in Chicago, but you're doing some things that are unique too. So can you share some insights about things that you're doing in Chicago?
Yeah, certainly. Obviously we've all been through kind of the stages of grief and panic and all that to try to get back to business. But when it comes down to it, trying to get keeping the business moving and keeping your participants engaged so that they understand kind of that you're there for them and that you're going to be there for them in the end. So, we try to do everything we can. We're trying to capitalize a lot. In Chicago, the weather's not the greatest come, late October, November, December, but we're trying to capitalize on trying to run as much outdoors as we can for as long as we can. Typically, most of the Midwest and upper north cities end kind of around Thanksgiving-ish. We're trying to push as far as we can for as long as people will be willing to do that. So we're running a few quicker leagues, 4-week leagues, kind of after our fall seasons end. And we're hoping to kind of generate some stuff happening that way. We've been really doing a lot. We've had a brand called grabagame.com that is kind of a side of our business that focuses strictly on kind of one-off pickup play. And we've really kind of done a lot of kind of promotion and marketing in that respect to kind of get those folks that can't commit to a whole season and want to, maybe they don't feel comfortable. So we've done a lot of bringing together kind of cohorts or small groups and kind of getting them an hour or two on a given court and paying us to kind of play amongst some friends. Maybe their comfort level isn't to be in a full-fledged league where they're going to be playing against random people week in and week out, but that's helped us kind of keep people playing and keep their comfort level. As Justin said, our priority first and foremost is people's safety and well-being. So we're trying to do everything we can to maintain that. Another thing we're doing is we typically do a Bloody Mary Fest, which is about 1,000-person in-person event tied with like a fun run and yoga. And really all of that is off the table right now. So what we've kind of done is we've looked at different avenues and through our relationships, and that's the beauty of what a lot of us do, is the relationships we have and kind of the exposure to bars, restaurants, sponsors, people that play in our leagues, trying to find ways to kind of develop fun events. This one is more of an in-person, where we call it a Bloody Mary Passport, where you pay $20 and you get 6 Bloody Marys at 6 different bars that you can utilize anytime between October 24th and November 22nd. So they can go on their own. It isn't a huge, large-scale event, and we're just kind of trying to do whatever we can to kind of get a little bit of revenue here, a little bit of revenue here, and being, as Justin said, kind of the middleman for some of these kind of events, and kind of focusing in hard on what we're good at, and that's kind of creating fun community kind of events. We're also partnering, doing a virtual 5K at America's Turkey Trot, where you pay and you get your typical kind of swag with the medal and all that. And so we promote that, and we have a company that we partnered with that kind of handles the kind of race side of things. And so it's really a no risk for us to kind of utilize ourselves as a marketing arm and utilize our community and reach, kind of drive these other initiatives to kind of help give a little bit more revenue and a little more opportunity. What we want to do is have a list of things for anybody and everybody that can take advantage of. And we've done a little bit of the bingo and a little bit of the trivia and things like that, but trying to find those other resources and serve as kind of a third party kind of marketing opportunity, and then really focusing on how we can run our leagues as best we can is what we've been doing mostly.
That's excellent. I think, it reiterates the fact that all of us on this call are in the business of providing opportunities for community. And it's really forced us all to reimagine what community can be. And I think one of the huge advantages that an industry segment like this filled with entrepreneurs is that, you have that, you've gotten to this position because of the creativity, because of the innovation, because of the ability to pivot quickly. And at no point in our history has that been more necessary than right now. So I think it's really helpful for everyone on this call to hear the kinds of things, the specific things that you guys are doing to try to make that pivot and continue to serve the need that your own audience has come to depend on you for. I want to take just a quick pause here because we're going to kind of segue into forward looking. And I want to ask if my team in the background can bring up the results of the poll question we asked earlier, just what your plans are for winter programming. And that's interesting. So I think there's pretty much universal agreement that things aren't looking normal. So if we're executing programming, it's either in a very modified sense or it's on hold. So that's a very poignant visual there for everyone. So I think that leads nicely into the next conversation, which is looking ahead. Cool weather is upon us, especially for those of us in the northern part of the country. Where the virus isn't stable. It's starting to tick upward, and we're all acutely aware of that. So as you think about, I guess let's talk about this from an industry sense first. So Krissy, I'll lob this to you first for some comment, but what do you see just industry wide are the biggest challenges facing this industry over the next, let's say, 6 months?
Sure. So obviously a lot of indoor facilities aren't offering space. So, if some of them can't even, we still have clubs in certain states. I know a lot of our clubs in California have not even been able to get started at all. So, that also depends on each of the state's guidelines. There's also, the lack of the next round of stimulus that we all were waiting on has been a big challenge, and I think is going to continue to be. We had actually done a lot of lobbying efforts within our association to try to help with pushing forward the Restart Act. And, I don't see that happening anytime soon. And then also just looking from like a staffing perspective and burnout from people who are still left at the organizations is a big concern. So those are probably the biggest challenges that I'm seeing from our members.
Do you get a sense of any consistent strategies that organizations are using to attack those challenges, or has a consistent strategy been kind of elusive to this point?
I would say it's been elusive. It really depends on where they're located. And I think size also. I've noticed that our smaller tiered clubs and some of our kind of leaner running medium-sized clubs have been able to weather this a bit better than some of our larger clubs who had a lot more overhead. But I would say the The themes I'm seeing for people looking, into winter specifically are that they're either, actually that poll really well represented it. Some have made the decision to just use winter as a planning time to just focus on spring. Some are relying on, some in-person leagues and small events along with virtual. One thing that I've found that is really interesting has been the fact that a good number of our members are actually collaborating together. So if one group doesn't have the manpower or the bandwidth to put something on, they're actually partnering up with other SSIA members to be able to do that. So that's been a pretty interesting thing to see. I really, really like that, that's happening. So there's been support amongst members, which has been great.
And that is a great teaser to something we're going to mention here towards the end of the call too, which I'll save for now and make you all wait in suspense. So thanks for bringing that up. Justin and Brian, I guess digging down more specifically when looking at the next months, how are each of you in your specific organizations embracing that challenge? What do you see as your biggest challenge? And then what kind of plans are you putting in place to overcome those? So Justin, I'll toss it to you first.
So one is extending the outdoor season, as Brian mentioned. So we're doing kickball, which may eventually be year-round at this point, just to give people the opportunity to be outdoors. We don't expect big numbers, but is anyone we can feel that is getting engaged, that's a success for us. For indoor programming, what we've done is gone to the venues and taken video to show any of the changes that are made there, and including those on our LeagueApps registration pages. So when people go and register, they can see that there are steps being taken to try to provide the safest experience possible. One example is the bowling alleys that we go to have put up, one of them specifically put like shower curtains in between every table. So when you're at the table, you can have your mask off because you can eat and drink there. But when you're walking around, you're going to the bowl, you have to have your mask on. So people seeing that, hey, there are steps being taken to ensure their safety. There's sanitizer everywhere. They sanitize all the balls in between uses. Those are things that we want to provide people to make them feel more assured that this is going to be the safest way possible to come out and play. And we know there are going to be people who still won't feel comfortable, and we respect that. But those who are looking, we need them to know that, again, their safety is our top priority, and we'll do everything we can to ensure that. So I think people seeing that goes a long way. We've received a lot of positive feedback about that.
Awesome. Great insight on that, and creative, of course, but yeah, fantastic. Brian.
Sorry, and having a LeagueApps site where you can embed video is a very great tool for us to be able to showcase that. So thank you.
Excellent plug, by the way. Way to go. Appreciate that. Brian, to you specifically, for your programs in Chicago, what are you seeing as your biggest challenges moving forward, next 6 months timeframe? I know one thing you mentioned yesterday was your traditional reliance on the schools for indoor space, and now many of them in Chicago Metro are shut down. So maybe that's one specific example you can expand on and how you're trying to adapt to that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously space is a concern. We utilize a lot of public schools, and schools in Chicago are all remote right now, so they don't want to have anyone even inside their building whatsoever, let alone an outside organization. And really the biggest challenge is kind of the current spike in numbers that we're seeing across the nation, and specifically in Illinois. And so that's a major challenge, people's comfort level of playing indoors. Now, we are doing some indoor stuff here in the fall, from bowling, basketball, and indoor volleyball, and our numbers are pale in comparison to what they normally are. But those that are playing are seeing kind of what we're doing, and we haven't had any kind of situations come up. So trying to kind of grow from that. So what we're trying to do is really maximize the places that we play at, whether it's 45-minute, 50-minute games, playing at hours that we didn't think normally were possible, 5 or 6 o'clock. A lot of people are working from home now, so the idea of commuting or fighting traffic to get to 5 or 6 o'clock game isn't as cumbersome as it was before. And then, like I mentioned, the pickup stuff. We've also really gone heavy into doing a lot more of the bar game type stuff, from cornhole to bocce to euchre and other kind of smaller type of games, but higher profitability type games, and just getting other ways to find and utilize the space. We have a basketball court where we didn't get enough people playing basketball, so we decided to offer pickleball for the very first time, and we've converted the basketball court into, it can be upwards of 3 courts of pickleball on that same court, and so you get more people playing and more profitability on a court than you would from just 2 teams playing basketball. So diving into that, and then we've been working real heavy on kind of our Facebook groups and trying to grow those communities, and a lot of what Justin was talking about of we serve our people and finding out what they want, and trying to get to the bottom of what people are interested in, and trying to offer those things. We're still going to offer our same litany of sports in the hope that we'll get enough registrations. We're realistic in knowing that we won't achieve our numbers, but trying to find other creative ways to kind of bring in a little bit of revenue here, a little bit of revenue here, and kind of weather the weather, and get through to spring, where hopefully things will rebound and we can get back outdoors where people's comfort level is a lot greater.
You made an interesting comment yesterday that I wanted to bring back to the surface today. And I had asked the question, like, what's been the bigger obstacle for you? Has it been the access to space, or has it been participant confidence to participate in a program in the midst of a pandemic? And do you have any thoughts you can share with the group about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really confidence. And the one thing we've been seeing a lot of, we rely heavily on a lot of corporate teams and corporate dollars and corporate events. And a lot of companies have kind of withdrawn that idea or money towards that, not only to save money for themselves as their businesses are struggling, but they don't want to expose their workers to being out 2 weeks potentially contracting it, or put them in harm's way. And some of the companies, their people are no longer in a downtown office, so the ease of playing a kickball league after work versus them all living elsewhere is just out of the picture. So we're at a point where we kind of have the people who really are into playing want to play. We certainly aren't selling everything out that we have right now. So if we had some of these other schools and more space, it's hard to say if our numbers would exponentially increase. Although some of those locations are more desirable, or a better location, or a better gym, for example, or a better field. But I think we play in kind of a condensed area of Chicago, so our people don't like to travel too far. So we haven't had any success recently in trying to expand into other neighborhoods or into the suburbs and things of that nature. But it's certainly something to consider. The one thing we have kicked around, and now is kind of the time to start thinking about, is delving into the kind of youth, or the kind of the teen market. What we found, we weren't able to act on it quickly, but once schools stopped running sports, for the most part, the ones that are more moderate or higher risk, those families and those kids are looking for an outlet, and we already kind of do a lot of that already. So kind of considering, expanding our market, or our reach, our demographic, is another way, or diving more into e-commerce and things like that, to try to find little nuggets here that can kind of keep us churning along throughout the winter.
So as we begin to circle the airport a little bit and bring this one in for a landing, that bridges nicely into kind of the last couple of questions here. So Krissy, maybe I'll toss this to you first, but what are there, we're going to dig into this more next week too. Next week we're going to be able to talk more about big picture, thinking strategically long term, and how we pivot, and how we maybe reassess or redefine how we're adding value to our communities. But are there, either from an industry sense or from your own personal experience, are there ideas emerging where that would constitute outside of the box thinking, creative thinking that provides additional value to our communities? And are there new or unique ideas that you've picked up on?
I'm really loving the idea of the virtual 5Ks. I think that what I really appreciate about it is that it still gets people moving their bodies, but they can be connected to a bigger community. You know, whether it's getting in touch with your family who you haven't been able to see because of the pandemic and saying, hey, why don't you join me in running this virtual 5K so we can be a part of it together, or reaching out to your old kickball team who you haven't been able to play with and getting them involved in it that way. I think is something that has a lot of legs and is going to be something I see as kind of emerging within our industry here within the next few months. And I also just think like overall collaboration is so key during times of need, especially being able to commiserate with people, to being able to be transparent and saying, you know what, I'm having a really hard day today because, you know, things just aren't, you know, working out for us the way that we thought that they were, but being able to also hear from someone else that they're also kind of feeling that way. But then being able to pick yourself up, brush off your shoulders and say, well, let's figure out how we can work together to push through this really difficult time. So that's been really, you know, being a part of an association and you know, we're all greater than the sum of our parts, right? So being able to kind of use the power of those numbers and to be able to pick up the phone and say, hey, what's your idea on this? I'd really like to tackle it, and have, you know, multiple people being able to you know, kind of talk it over, I think has been really key.
You know, it gives credence to the concept that we're not all that unique from those who are participating with us. I mean,
Nope.
they're looking for that sense of community, and so are we. And just to know that you're not going through this alone, that you're not unique in the challenges you're trying to face, just knowing that you have support and you have people who care about your success. I mean, I think that's a really healthy thing. And I think it's a good segue to the thing I teased earlier, in that LeagueApps as an organization, we are having a conversation about, we had a youth sport leadership council over the summer, just an opportunity for leaders to come together, share thoughts, share ideas, small group discussions, things like that. We're considering doing the same thing for the adult recreation segment within LeagueApps as well. And so there's going to be a poll question coming up here in a minute that will ask you what your level of interest might be to join your peers from across the country for those types of small group discussions focused on administrative leadership, and if that's something you'd be interested in participating in. So I'll give you all a moment to answer that, and we'll see what kind of results we get on that, and hopefully that will lead us to a good opportunity to continue this discussion into the coming weeks and months. The last question I'll ask, and Brian, I'll toss this to you first, and we'll let Justin land the plane. But what advice do you have for those listening in? Just generally, what's the best advice you can share with those listening in on how to navigate the coming months?
Thank you. The best advice I can give is to not feel like you have to do it yourself. Build it from the ground up. There's other people that are doing some of these things, and really hone in and lean in on what you're good at. And what we're good at is kind of building community and utilizing our network and making connections. And so finding those opportunities where you can utilize, you know, our people as a marketing tool, our equipment for something, our vans to deliver food, whatever the case may be, like try to find those avenues that you can kind of make some money. It doesn't need to be a huge, you know, 5-6 figure kind of win for you, but finding a bunch of little ones that aren't that cumbersome. You know, a lot of the clubs that exist in our space, you know, are smaller 1, 2, 3 person clubs. And the idea of kind of starting a virtual end of their business from the ground up when they have another job or something like that is really daunting. And to think of the kind of effort reward aspect of it. So find somebody who is doing it and find a way that you can be cut in to that, and that makes it a win-win for both. And you know, every little win you have is revenue coming in. You didn't have to fight that hard for. And don't give up faith. You know, the great thing, you know, once you get back to playing, is seeing the people having fun and appreciating it. Over time, they're going to be the same pain in the ass they were before, but what we do and have fun with it is why we do it. And so seeing people doing the things, wearing your shirt around town, having fun, commenting or liking on a post is why we do this. So don't get too down about it, and things will improve at some point, but rely on community and rely on your network and what you bring to the table to kind of get you through this.
Awesome advice. Yeah, you always be connecting back to your why. I love that. And you know, that's spoken from somebody who's been a leader in this industry for a long time. And so I think it would do everyone a lot of good to take that advice to heart and figure out how you implement that in meaningful ways in your own community. But Justin, any thoughts to add to that? What's the best advice you could share from your point of view for people to navigate the next few months?
I mean, Brian just crushed that. How you got to follow that up? Oh man. Overall, a lot of what Brian said. I think just being creative in the ways that you're finding ways to program. We all found these intramural sports leagues as a way to connect people. There's a lot of other opportunities out there, and people look to us. So we don't need to come and recreate the wheel. You know, as I told Brian yesterday, I started Come Play Detroit based on my great experiences being a part of Chicago Social. And then when I returned to Detroit, I went to them to find out how I can take that and bring that to Detroit. There are lots of organizations out there who are providing a lot of really unique virtual programming. Something I'd be happy to share with you, Nate, that if you wanted to send out to everyone with a lot of our partners in terms of the escape rooms and you know, I'm sure there's local cooking and classes and wine classes, but even like the trivia, like originally that was a selfish interest of mine because I wanted to feel connected to everyone and to see hundreds of people playing, and we set up times for people who will talk in between games and mute everyone. Like that's where I got my energy from while we were all, you know, on lockdown. So thinking of what you obviously would like to do, but knowing there's others out there and you can go out and help them, which is what I feel a lot of this is I'm involved with, is I want to help the community feel connected. And there's other ways. So seek those out and be that organization still that people come to for guidance. How can they still feel engaged with their communities, with other people? We do a lot with the corp companies, so they come to us, and we've got this about 8 or 9 different opportunities for them to still have their workforces being connected through these virtual programs. So again, I'd be happy to share some of these with you guys. Some of them are just software programs that we have ourselves that we purchased, like the Trivia and Family Feud. We've run poker tournaments for people, for companies, things along those lines. And we don't do anything with actual cash. We do just various prizes. Again, to the gambling base, there's enough out there. So yeah, just diversifying. Again, this is stuff that I think will help our organizations long-term, having a larger menu of offerings that we can provide people that will also expand our networks of who we're able to provide these services to.
I love something you said in there, and it relates to something you hear in youth sports circles sometimes. If you're coaching, it's that, you know, you can't expect the kids to have fun if you're not having fun yourself. And
definitely,
you said something that relates very closely to that. It's like, don't diminish things that you want to do, because chances are if you want to do them, you're going to be more invested in them, but also there's a good chance that lots of other people are going to want to do it too. So be willing to explore your own interests. It's not a selfish pursuit by any means. It in some ways it's more likely to find some success. So I love that recommendation too. And I think that's a really unique angle on that. So I'm going to give everyone one last chance to ask any questions they might have of our panelists. We got about 5 minutes, and I didn't see any when I peeked in there, but go ahead. If you have a specific question you'd like to ask, feel free to put that in the chat. In the meantime, let's take a look at the results of that most recent poll about the leadership group. And there does seem to be an appetite for that. There were no no's, so that's good. Okay, so we will fully refine that idea and make sure that we get some information out to this group. A good chance that we'll even have that refined by this time next week when we're on our second of 2 sessions. I was going to make one more point on that, but I forgot. Oh, Justin, yeah, you had mentioned a willingness to share some of that content, and we'll make sure that we gather that and share that out with the group as well. So I don't believe we've had any questions come in, but kind of a last call for anyone with specifics they'd like to ask the group, and if not, we will. Oh, here's a good one. Now they're starting to come in. Okay, that last call scared them all into asking their questions. Okay, first question is for Krissy. Can you talk about joining SSIA? Great point. I would have completely forgotten that.
Yes. So we have a couple of different membership tiers based on your revenue. Obviously, everyone's revenue is down significantly due to COVID. But I can go ahead if you want, Christine. I can send you my email address and we can set up a time to talk. But we have a small process to go through. You figure out what tier you would be under. And then we would do kind of an introductory interview. And then, as long as you meet our criteria, then we would invite you in. Our board would do just a 48-hour hold so that members can, so that we just kind of vet our members just to make sure that they're going to, align with our ethics and all of those good things. But then, yeah, once you join, then you have access to our private Facebook group page, our private Slack channels. We have purchasing programs that, you can get decent discounts on for equipment and shirts. And our insurance program is really, really great with Jason Webb with Bell Anderson. We work with Gravity for, some really competitive rates for your merchant services. And then really, I think the biggest value is really just being able to, again, be connected with other people who kind of know the ins and outs of what you're doing and can help you kind of not have to reinvent the wheel. So I'll put my email address in here and feel free to reach out to me afterwards.
You've got a couple of SSIA fans on the call as well. They're talking about what a great investment it's been for them. Best decision they've made is joining SSIA, and just
thanks, guys. That's good stuff.
You got some fans out there. One other question that came in is just a general sense of what percentage do you expect business to be down over the coming months? What are your expectations, I guess, of your own businesses, but maybe as a industry at large as well?
Sure. With again, currently we're seeing 76% of respondents are down 55 to 99% of their revenue. That was again at the beginning of September when we had pulled those numbers. Okay. But going into the winter months, I would say we'd probably be seeing similar numbers. Brian or Justin, do you have any other thoughts on that?
We are at about 70% of our typical revenue, not having our basketball leagues and soccer leagues were two of the big ones but what really, if anything, hurt us was all the credits that we gave out for the leagues we had to cancel. So no programming March to June kind of set us back. But the revenue that we're able to generate through our, I'll call it alternative programs, the virtual stuff, has really got us closer to that 85 to 90% of our typical revenue, which we're very fortunate to be in that position. And I think a lot of that has to do with the corporations that we work with who are still seeking ways to engage their employees. And I think Detroit might be unique to like Chicago, where Detroit's really still focused and always has been on retention and attraction of young talent, making people feel connected to being in the city, where, you know, Chicago just gets to be sexy and walk around doing their own thing. Our companies here still have that mindset of we need to do everything we can to attract people to the city.
Justin, I think you need to do some marketing for our city. You know, we've had a drop in population over the last few years, but maybe you can put up a billboard for us. But just to answer the question quickly for our numbers, you know, we had kind of a spring and summer that was at about 15% of where we normally are. And then our fall is at about 60%, you know, and that's just leagues. That has nothing to do with events. The events are way down, and sponsorship. For winter, we're probably forecasting around, you know, about a 15 or 20% for leagues, but doing everything we can kind of get above and beyond that, and then hope to be back closer to the kind of 70-80% spring and summer.
Yeah, and I think that's good. I think it illustrates the need to, you know, navigate the complications of this in the short term, but then this transitions nicely into the next conversation we're going to have next week at this time about you know, how we make that pivot then to long-term strategy, how we rethink our industry segment, how we rethink our strategy moving forward, and what needs we are actually fulfilling, and creative ways on how we can do that. So I want to just thank all of our guests, you know, for the great insight, great expertise shared with the call. You know, I knew it was going to be a great discussion when we had the pre-call yesterday, and I was not disappointed. So I hope that everyone who joined has some really good takeaways from people who've been doing this a long time and really know their stuff. And I think the theme of community kept coming through, and it's an issue that affects our participant bases, but it's also an issue that affects us as organizers. And so I think that's something we can really sink our teeth into over the coming months, has really come to depend on that need for community across the board. So just wanted to thank our panelists one more time for their time and their expertise. Want to also invite the rest of you to join us again next Thursday, the 29th at 1 p.m., where we will kind of take a more big picture look at navigating these challenging times moving forward, and hope you can make the time to join us then, and we'll have further discussion on this. So thank you everyone for joining us today. Have a great afternoon.
Thanks, guys.